Today we're going to go through how you can let users subscribe to your Bubble app using Stripe. We're going to look at a number of features including free trials, including upsells, and then once a user is subscribed, how they can manage their subscription again using Stripe. You can see here the ability to cancel plan, to see previous invoices, and change what type of plan you're on. I'm going to start off by looking at how our database is set up. You can see here that under the user data type, we have a number of custom fields. The first one is frequency, which is going to be either year or month, depending on what frequency we're charging users on. There's Stripe Customer ID and Stripe Subscription ID, both of which identify the customer and the subscription that we're using with Stripe. Subscription end is the end of the current period subscription. So for example, if we're on a monthly subscription and we paid on the 1st of January, subscription end is going to be the last day in January. Similarly, subscription start is going to be the first day of the current subscription period. So if we paid on the 1st of January and it's currently the 7th of January, 1st of January is going to be the date in here. Subscription status is important. This basically tells us whether our subscription is active, whether it's cancelled, whether we're on a trial. You can see I've put a default here of not activated. I'll come back to why that's important in a minute. And then finally, something we'll touch on later on is use free trial. So we do want to offer users the option of a free trial, but we don't want them to continually be able to take advantage of it. They can only use it once. Now that we have our database structure, let's go back to our Bubble app and let's sign up using some dummy data. And we'll sign up. I've set up some conditionals here to show and hide various elements depending on whether or not the user is logged in. So we can see that we have this content or feature here that we can't currently access because we're not subscribed via Stripe. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up some workflows that will subscribe the user to Stripe when they click on this button and then reveal the hidden features or content behind this gate here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to go into our Stripe dashboard. Qualified is the name of a previous app I worked on, so I'm just in the test section of this. We're going to add a product. We're going to make this a subscription product, and we're going to give it a standard pricing, and it's going to be 25 euros per month. Later on, we'll come back and offer annual billing as well, but for now, let's just save that. Now that that's saved, we're going to go back to our Bubble editor, and we need to make sure we have two plugins specifically installed. The first one is the Stripe plugin, which is made by Bubble. I've put in my own API keys here from the Stripe dashboard, the development ones, which are blurred out for obvious reasons. And we also need to install the Stripe Customer Portal plugin, which is an independent plugin, not built by the Bubble team, but it does work quite well. One thing to note is you need to put in your secret key in this section here. Before that, you do need to write in bearer and space. You can also put in a return URL parameter, which is more than likely the kind of homepage of your app or where you want to send the users back to after using the portal. Now that we have that set up, we can start working on some workflow. So let's click on the design tab, and we're going to start building out a workflow for that subscription. So when the user clicks on the subscribe button, what we're going to do is we're going to subscribe them to a plan. So if we go down to payment and we go subscribe the user to a plan, and you'll see here that I have a range of plans. The reason is that a couple of products have been archived. In this case, relevant plan, the one we've just created is the second one here. We only want one. You can leave the subscription ID blank and we can leave that like that. So it might be a good time just to demonstrate what that's going to do. The idea eventually is, of course, once they're subscribed, they will be able to see behind that piece of text there. So anyway, user logged in, not currently subscribed. When you click on that button, you can see that we're brought to this really nice Stripe checkout page. And there's a whole bunch of ways you can personalize this based on the Stripe dashboard, but you can see here it's asking for card details, name on card, and then once you have all that in, you can click subscribe. I will do that in a second, but not just yet. The reason I'm not going to do it yet is because we want to get information back from Stripe once we have subscribed. So before we do that, I'm just going to go back to that workflow I just created, and we're just going to tell Bubble what data to take from Stripe. So we're going to be making changes to the current user, and there's a fair few fields here we're going to be changing. The first one we're going to change is the Stripe customer ID. So if you got a current user and then you go down here to Stripe's customer ID, then that should pull that in. So next we're going to look at Stripe subscription ID, and it's going to be a result of step 1, and it's going to be subscription ID. Next we're going to look at subscription start. So this is going to be the first date in the subscription period, and again result of step 1 and current period starting date. Similar enough for subscription end, it's going to be a result of step 1 and current period ending date. And then a couple more, we're going to look at status, which is quite an important one. And this is going to be simply result of step 1 status. And then finally, for now, we're going to look at frequency. And in our case, this is going to be month. If we were looking at an annual plan, which we may do later, this will be year. But for now, we're going to go and take items, first item, and we're going to take interval is the relevant field for that. So let's refresh that. We'll once again click on that subscribe button, but this time we will actually fill out the right details. So I'm going to click on subscribe. Once again brought to this really nice Stripe checkout page, and I'm going to use the Stripe dummy data, which you can find really easily by just Googling it, to fill out some of these fields here. So I filled out all of that data, but just before I click subscribe, I do want us to go back into the database and show the current user's data as it stands at the moment. So we go in here, we can see there isn't really much there except for the not activated, which you might remember I said is default for the user when that was created. But most of the rest of the fields, or the custom fields at least, are blank. However, if we go back to our Stripe checkout here and click subscribe, we should see that will change thanks to the workflow that we just created. So we see it went through successfully, again using the Stripe dummy card there for testing purposes. And if we go back into our database, what we should see is a lot of these fields should now be filled out. You can see for frequency we have month, again, which makes sense because it's a monthly subscription. We have our Stripe customer ID coming in. We have the start and end of the current period subscription dates. And we also have subscription status, which has changed from that default not activated, which I originally had in, to active, which is quite important because you'll see if we go back to our app that I've used conditionals to basically show and hide the content depending on whether or not the user has an active subscription. So if we go back into editor, you can just see this quite clearly. And there's quite a few ways you can do this. The way I've done it is the default text is this is a gated feature. And then if the subscription status is either not activated, which is the default, or cancelled, which is when a subscription is cancelled, then the text just changes to please subscribe to access this feature. Again, you could show and hide different groups using the same logic. It's really just a quick example on how to do that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to give users the ability to cancel their subscriptions. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to use that second plugin that we installed earlier, which is the Stripe Customer Portal plugin. So if we go into plugins and we choose self-service portal, Stripe portal, and we get rid of that customer ID that was predefined and we change it to the dynamic Stripe customer ID. Then the second step is going to be back in plugins and it's going to be open portal in new tab. The portal URL is going to be the result of step 1 and its URL. You'll see that we have a manage billing button appearing now rather than subscribe button. So again, that was just a small bit of conditional logic to show and hide the various buttons depending on what the user's subscription status was. No need to go into that in too much detail there. But the important thing is once we click on manage billing now, what you'll see is it's just not going to work. We're getting an error there, and that's because we haven't actually created the portal within the Stripe dashboard. So we're going to do that now. And the way you find that is you go to settings in your Stripe dashboard, and once that loads up, you can choose to create a customer portal here. And there's a whole range of options. I won't go into all of them because there really is quite a bit of detail, but let's just do some of the quick ones. Invoice history, that's nice to be able to allow customers to see how much they paid in the past. Update email address and billing address, don't really need that at the moment, I don't think. Allow customers to update their payment methods, that could be handy. And most importantly, allow customers to cancel subscriptions. I'm going to cancel immediately just for simplicity's sake, and then we will also leave that unchecked to prorate cancel subscriptions for now, and then allow customers to switch to a different pricing plan. We'll come back to that maybe in a bit, but I think that's fine for now. So let's save that. We can now see our customer portal has been created. So hopefully now once we click on this, we should see the portal come up, and sure enough, that has worked, which is good. So it's quite similar to the checkout screen that we were looking at earlier. So you can see at the moment, currently on a €25 per month plan, it's renewing in a month's time. We've already paid that first €25. So I'm going to click on cancel. And depending on the options you choose, you can, choose to extend the plan to the end of the month, or, let them cancel the subscription immediately. For our sake, we're actually going to cancel it immediately. So we'll close out of that portal. And what you'll notice is that the gated feature is still available, which isn't really what we want. I mean, this user just cancelled their subscription, so they shouldn't be able to see this. Instead of a manage billing button, it should be presented with a subscribe button, because again, their subscription is cancelled. And the reason is Bubble isn't yet talking to Stripe in terms of the cancellation. If we go back into our database, you'll see here that Bubble still thinks the subscription is active, even though if we go back into our portal and if we go to customers, what we will see is that if we go into that test user I created, we should see in here that the subscription is cancelled. So we have a bit of a mismatch here between Bubble, who thinks the subscription is active, and Stripe, who have cancelled subscription and haven't registered as cancelled on their portal. And the reason is that, like I said, we don't have Bubble talking to Stripe at the moment. So we're going to use webhooks to solve that problem. Now, if you want to use webhooks, the first thing you need to do is go into your settings, go to API, and ensure that Enable Workflow API and Backend Workflows is ticked. If you do that, what you'll see is you'll have this new tab called Backend Workflows. And we're going to create a new backend workflow. It's called an API workflow. We're going to give this the name of Update Subscription. We're going to tick this box and also ignore privacy rules. We're going to change the parameter definition from manual definition to detect request data. And then we're going to click on detect data. So this is essentially putting out an endpoint for Stripe to hit, and it basically allows Stripe to send data to Bubble or let Bubble know when actions happen. I've copied that address. I'm going back into my Stripe dashboard. I'm going to developers. I'm going to webhooks, and I'm going to add an endpoint. This is where you add in that URL that we've just copied, and we are going to select an event to listen to. And again, we're concerned in this case with the account or subscription, I should say, being deleted. So we're going to go customer dot account or subscription dot deleted, and we're going to add that event. Add that endpoint, and what you'll see is that there hasn't been any action yet, so we're waiting for this event. And I believe Stripe have changed their interface, so this is a bit confusing in a sense that if you want this to work, you actually have to cancel a subscription yourself once just to get this off the ground, which is a bit of a hassle. In previous tutorial videos I've seen on this, there was a nice send test webhook action. We don't have that for whatever reason. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to create a new user, sign them up very quickly, and then cancel their subscription to show you how that works. And I think this is the only way at the moment to get this working. Okay, we've now signed up that new user. And just to show you that again, we're going to go back into our database, and this is our new one, test user 124. Again, active subscription at the moment, but we're actually going to cancel this manually via the Stripe dashboard. And just before I do that, let's try this. If we go into events and we go into this, so what we're going to see is that when we cancel our Stripe customer subscription, there's going to be a new event that'll be basically cancellation, and then we'll have a webhook attempt to try and send data to Bubble. So anyway, let's go back to customers. This is the new one we have. And we are now going to cancel their subscription. Cancel immediately. And then we're going to go back to our webhook section. And hopefully we've seen An attempt of a webhook. Yeah, that's good. First of all, that's showing up, which is great. We are getting 100% error rate, which is to be expected, because if we go to events and we click on that most recent event, which is the cancellation, yeah, you'll see here that that webhook failed to go. And the reason it didn't work is because we didn't have, if we go into our workflow, we didn't have detect data and this detecting data request live when the webhook was sent. So now we're going to go back. We're going to resend it, and it was resent. And hopefully when we go back into Bubble, yeah, we now have Stripe attempting to send data back to Bubble after that event cancellation. There's one thing we need to be careful about here, and you can see there's a lot of data coming back, and the one thing we want to change is around the start and end dates of the current subscription. Yeah, so object current period end and object current period start. They're currently coming in as numbers. We want to change them to dates, date Unix specifically. You'll see why in a minute, but that is important to note, just to make sure there aren't any other ones that I'm mistaking instead. No, that looks fine. So now we're going to save this. And what we're going to do is we're going to update our user based on that webhook. So again, we're going to go to data things, make changes to a thing, and we're going to go do a search for a user. You might ask, why not just use the current user? Well, the reason we're not using current user in this way is because this is a backend workflow. Bubble isn't going to know what the current user is if some random user out of 200 you have cancels their invoice. It needs to be told exactly which one. So we're going to do a search for user. This is why we used the Stripe customer ID earlier, because we want the Stripe customer's ID to equal request data's objects customer. So that's essentially the customer ID. So Bubba's going to do a search and find the users we have, match their customer ID with whatever customer ID sent the latest request. And then we're going to start making some changes. So if we think that customers might cancel on us and we need to be aware of that, what we'll do is we'll change our subscription status to request data's status. Okay, so just to do a bit of a recap, whenever a user cancels their account, at the moment it's happening outside of Bubble, so we need to use a webhook to send data from Stripe back to Bubble. We've now initialized this, and you can see the most recent one succeeded. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a brand new user and just go through that flow one more time, just so it's kind of obvious from start to finish. Okay, so we have a fresh user subscribed to our plan. Let's refresh our data in the backend. We should see a third one now. And you can see there its subscription status is active. And hopefully now when we cancel our subscription via this is going to change to cancelled. Before we do that, and this is really important, we've now initialized a webhook, but if we want to consistently push data to it, we actually have to make a slight change. So we're going to go into our webhook here, and we're going to edit it, or update details, I should say, and we're going to delete this initialize here. We don't need that after we've actually already initialized it. Update that endpoint. Then we're going to go into manage billing with our new subscribed user. And hopefully this time when we cancel, we should see Bubble send data back, or sorry, Stripe send data back to Bubble. Okay, let's go to cancel plan. Cancel plan, again, the canceling immediately. That's fine. We can now get out of this. And this is good. You can see straight away we're seeing please subscribe to access this feature, which makes me think that the webhook was successful. Let's go into our database, refresh data, and click on the most recent user. And sure enough, you can see there that subscription status has changed to cancelled, which is exactly what we wanted. We can see this in Stripe as well if we go to webhooks, we should see a list of them. I'm surprised there isn't actually a list of them here. Sometimes if you refresh the dashboard, it comes up. It can actually take a second as well sometimes, just for Stripe to register the webhook has actually been sent. And yeah, you can see there the first two actually failed, but then the most recent ones are working, which is great. Okay, so that's how you set up webhooks to get Stripe and Bubble to talk to each other. Okay, so our user subscription has been cancelled and we're going to resubscribe them. But this time, rather than just having the monthly pricing option of €25 per month, we're going to want to present them with an option to subscribe for €240 per year. Obviously, fairly common tactic among SaaS companies to allow annual pricing. So you can see just €25 per month at the moment. How we can get that €240 per year is if we go back into products, go into our demo plan, and we're going to add another price. We do €25 per month in there. We're now going to add €240 per annum. Once that price is added, we're actually going to go back into our €25 per month pricing, and we're going to add a new option, and it's called upsell. So we're upselling to €240 per year. Now when we go click subscribe, what we should hopefully see is there's an option on the Stripe checkout page to pay €240 per year rather than just the €25 per month option. And you can see it's presented really nicely here, €25 per month, but then if we click on that, then we're going to get the €240 per annum. So I'm going to click subscribe on that, resubscribing our user, and we'll take a look then at the database and see how this is going to shape up in terms of what data fields this action has just changed. Okay, first thing we can see is our frequency has updated to year. You might remember this previously was on month. You can see the subscription end is now updated to the 15th of March 2023, which is a year away. And you can see that subscription status is on active. So that's really good. We updated our backend quite nicely without too much trouble. Now we want to give our users the ability to manage their subscription in the Manage Billing portal, which is that self-serve Stripe portal. You might have sometimes where a customer signs up on a monthly plan, but then wants to move to an annual plan. So what we need to do to allow that is go back into our customer portal, and then we're going to go down to the end of the page or near the end of the page, and we're going to allow customers to switch to a different pricing plan. We're then going to add in our two products in here, and we're going to click save. We're going to go back to our bubble editor, and remember now our current user is on an annual plan, so we're going to try and change them back to a monthly plan. So you can see now that we have an option to update the plan. We're going to change from the annual plan down to a monthly plan. Now this is going to work in terms of Stripe. You can see there the first €25 isn't going to be due until this 1 year period is over. But if we confirm that, Stripe will register that this user has converted to a monthly plan, but Bubble isn't going to know this yet. So if we go back into our database and into data, we should see that our user 125 is still going to be on an annual plan. And the reason is we haven't got Bubble talking to Stripe using those webhooks again. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our Stripe portal. We're going to go to developers. We're going to go to webhooks, and we're going to add a second event to our existing webhook. You can see we are currently listening for this event here, and we're going to add one more event for this webhook to listen to. The one we're going to look for is customer.subscription.updated. And we're going to update that endpoint. Then we're going to go back to our bubble editor. We're going to go back to our backend workflows because we want to capture one piece of extra data from this, and that's the frequency. So this is going to be either year or month depending on what the user does. So let's look for interval, and object plan interval is the field we want there. So we're going to go back to our bubble app. We can X out of this, And we're now going to flick back and forth between monthly and annual billing, and hopefully this is going to be registered on the bubble backend. So at the moment, you can see that the user is on an annual plan, even though in reality they're on a monthly plan, as you can see here. So we're going to go to update plan, and we're going to go to yearly, and we're going to go to continue, and we'll confirm. Now, this change isn't going to register in Bubble because in a way we're just almost making it right again. But now we're going to update one more time, and we're going to go back to monthly. And now that this is done, hopefully we should see this register in the Bubble backend. So let's take a look. Let's refresh our data. And you can see the frequency for this user has now changed to month. The very last thing we're going to look at is how to offer free trials. So if we go back to our Stripe subscription demo page, what you'll see at the moment is there's only one workflow when a user initially clicks on the subscribe button. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use a bit of conditional logic here to only offer a free trial once the user hasn't already used it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to give the user a trial by going to end of the trial is going to be current date or time. And I'm going to make this 3 days, but instead of using 3 days, I'm going to do 72.1 hours. The reason I'm doing that is if you do 3 days, sometimes there's a few second gap between, when you click the action and when the user sees the screen. Stripe winds down, so you might see 2 days, even if it's 2.999 days, if that makes sense. So we're only going to subscribe this user and allow them to get a free trial if current users use free trial is no. Now, you might not have seen this because I didn't show it, but when the user initially signs up in our database, what we will see is that the default is no. This means that the default is that the user is going to be able to avail of this free trial, but once they have done this, we're going to change the use free trial to yes, and then we're going to set up a separate workflow. We're going to copy this and we're going to paste this here, and we're going to click that to yes. So once they have used their free trial, they are not going to get any free trial. So we'll get out of that. And again, I think the easiest thing here is to set up a new user account just to show this in both cases. So I'll do that very quickly. Okay, so fresh user has come in and we're going to click on subscribe, and they should now be offered a free trial. And what you'll see on this Stripe demo checkout page is you're getting 3 days free, and then they're going to be charged €25 per month afterwards. So this is exactly what we wanted, and we're going to sign this user up. Okay, so we now have access to the gated feature. Let's take a look at our database and just make sure that everything went okay. So our most recent user on a monthly plan, and their subscription status is trialing, which is what Stripe gives it if you're on a free trial. We're now going to cancel that subscription. So let's go to manage billing. And what we want to ensure is that this person can cancel their plan, and this should now be reflected in the Bubble backend thanks to the webhooks that we set up. Let's exit out of that, go back here, fresh data, and you see your subscription status is currently cancelled and their use free trial is yes. So we're now going to resubscribe them. And you can see that this time they're not being offered that free trial. They're being charged €25 per month because they haven't paid yet. They've already used their free trial, and they therefore don't get to avail of it again. So that's the end of the tutorial video. Hope it's been helpful. If you have any questions, do let me know in the comments. And if you'd like further Bubble tutorial videos, please do subscribe to the channel.